Hi, my name is Sylvia Bly, and today I'm going to talk about bringing archival accessibility to the disabled. An archive should be prepared to meet and deal with a variety of disabilities that may involve restricted abilities for walking, seeing, hearing, speaking, perceiving, or understanding, or physical coordination. According to an article released in 2012 by the U.S. Census Bureau, 1 in 5 people in the United States has reported disability. That is 19% of the population. This is a very large percentage of our population, and of course this article was 5 years ago, so it must be well above 20% by now. And a disability, which is broadly defined as a condition that prevents a person from engaging in daily tasks or actions in their everyday lifestyles. Physical disabilities are fairly easy to see, except in cases where the person may have an internal disability, such as congestive heart failure. Some examples would be like a wheelchair, which is obvious, or blind and visually impaired, which are usually noticed by the familiar red tip cane when walking, but some people don't use these aids and use a regular cane. Other people are not sight impaired but do have a hard time seeing due to a variety of conditions. There are a few conditions that usually do not slow patrons, such as asthma or deafness. These individuals will ask for help if needed, but there are additional steps that you can take to make the archival space more accessible. Mental disabilities have become much more identifiable in recent years. They present a different scenario that archivists need to be aware of when a patron comes into the archival institution. Most mental disabilities can be difficult to recognize and therefore can present a different type of challenge. Examples like autism spectrum disorder, which is the umbrella name for a group of developmental disorders. Individual with bipolar disorder, who suffers from mood swings, activity levels, and can have a hard time carrying out day-to-day tasks. And then there are other individuals that suffer from depression and anxiety. These individuals generally do not need assistance, but they will ask if needed. Humans have suffered from a variety of disabilities since we've been around. The treatment of those humans who were either born with the condition or become disabled later through accident or natural occurrence has not been something to be proud. Rather, these people were either shunned outright or worse. There have been several strides in the past few decades when the United States Congress has acted. The disabilities rights movements in the late 1960s and early 70s saw the Rehabilitation Act in 1972 pass. It provided that no individual that has identified as a disabled person shall be excluded from participating in any programs or activities receiving federal assistance. The Rehabilitation Act was followed by the Education for All Handicapped Children Act in 1975, which provided that no children should be denied access to education because of their disability. When the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990, followed by the ADA Amendments Act in 2008, these latest actions by Congress witnessed the most sweeping to date, bringing more awareness and assistance to this very important demographic. Another item to be remembered is that with the passing of these laws, this gave the library and archival world access to federal funds in order to update their institutions. So what can the archival world do to assist these patrons who would like to gain access to our archives, but do not have the ability to do so? For the physically disabled, a number of actions can be done, such as providing the proper space between stacks in the archives and access to lowered tables at the reference desk or in a reading room is one of the best ways to accommodate the wheelchair-bound patron. Many archives are not designed for allowing patrons into their storage areas, but this space allowance should be taken into consideration, as many archives do utilize ladder systems. For the blind and visually impaired, providing guidance and alarms that alert the patron are one of the various ways to assist these customers. Other accommodations such as specialized software programs and magnified screens are also useful. Asthma and other related respiratory disorders. These patrons do not usually need assistance with their research. However, a dust mask or other dust-reducing accommodation should be available if at all possible. For the deaf, communication has always been one of frustration. To communicate, they typically must exchange written notes back and forth between the archivist and researcher, which can slow the process down immensely and may not always make their communication clear. One of the best ways to accommodate the deaf is to have someone on staff who can sign American Sign Language. The mentally disabled can come with challenges all on their own when it comes to access. Autistic patrons may come in from time to time, and communicating with them presents an interesting scenario. They can be very communicative or not at all, and sometimes may visit with an assistant. The repository should be prepared for such patrons and possibly have a quiet room apart from the main reading room. The lights can be adjustable, as some autistic individuals have a hard time with sensory issues. But more important, an archivist can work with them one-on-one in a research interview to more readily assist them with their research. For bipolar disorder patrons, they don't typically need assistance with their research unless the issue occurs related to their condition. Same with depressed individuals and anxiety, as with these conditions, they don't typically need assistance unless something happens pertaining to their condition. Assistive technology is technology that is created and utilized for the disabled to make their lives easier, whether it is in a wheelchair, prosthetic limb, or software. It can be something very low tech, such as a keyboard made with particular texture for people who have sensory issues, all the way to complex software for people with language difficulties. For this presentation, I checked out 3 assistive technology software packages. The first one is called Dragon Naturally Speaking Premium 12. It was developed by Nuance Communications in 1997. ZoomText is a program that was developed by AI Squared back in 1988. And JAWS, Job Access with Speech, is another popular screen reader for Windows that was developed and produced by the Blind and Low Vision Group of Freedom Scientific in 1989. In addition to the above software programs, manual items such as a basic magnifying glass, signature guides, and felt tip pens can assist the researcher in working with their projects. I have to say, I was very surprised that I could find almost no research literature mentioning mental disabilities. It's very important for mental disabilities to be recognized by the library and archival community. Mental disabilities have become much more prevalent as our society works in diagnosing and integrating these people into everyday life rather than closing them up in an institution that was done as was done before. As medical information becomes much more widespread to the community at large, how we deal with these individuals will be as important as how we assist them in their research. Working with these individuals requires a lot of patience and understanding. Awareness training should be made available to the archival staff on the different conditions and what to expect when working with them. Although an archive cannot be expected to have the proper equipment available for each patron, staff should be aware of the technologies available to them and have other accommodations for use. There are challenges inherent in working with either physical or mental disabilities. But one must remember that these patrons are ordinary human beings and that they may or may not require your assistance, but in either case, you will find that they will be grateful when assistance is offered to them to make their research that much more informative and fulfilling. Thank you for listening. Attached is my references. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.